publicly, privately, all of it, that sort of addresses some of the issues without getting so ridiculously, I think, pointed or personal, when there really are legitimate issues at the core of it, meaning...
Welcome back to Thinking Critical, everybody. It's time, I like to talk about controversial subjects from time to time, and who better to have on the channel than Comics Perch, who likes to get himself in hot water every once in a while.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah, I try and avoid controversy, but I think my looking at both sides gains me a lot of it. So,
yeah, it happens. Like I said, you get in a bit of hot water from time to time in social media, and oddly enough, it's often for speaking out about behavior of creators and customers on social media. Today we're going to focus more on the professionals, although I fully intend to talk to you about customers on social media in the near future. First things first, there are far more creators who use social media well to promote and connect with audiences than don't. Matthew Rosenberg, Scott Snyder, Sean Gordon Murphy, Brian Edward Hill, Blake Northcott, even Tom King and Brian Michael Bendis, two creators I'm personally not very fond of, all use social media positively to varying degrees of success. Hell, Peter Simeti elevated his Alterna Comics brand with the way he and his creators use social media, so it can be done well. Unfortunately, a few creators like Dan Slott, Vida Ayala, Gail Simone sometimes, Al Ewing, and more use block bots. You recently called it out the practice as lazy, which got you in a bit of a pickle. Now, I personally see nothing unethical about block bots. Creators are just people. As long as they aren't violating company or platform policies, they can block away, in my opinion. But block bots are absolutely terrible business decisions. It would almost be better for them not to use social media at all than to randomly block customers. What do you say about it, Perch?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about block bots. I've done videos on block bots. I think they're a terrible practice, and I think lazy is the right word. And I agree with you. They're not. So for the record, unethical is they're not unethical. Everybody has their own social media presence. It's their social media account. This is one of the things I've gone back and forth on. But at the end of the day, the social media account of a creator is not a company account. Now, granted, it's their name out there. It's there. In some cases, the comic actually posts a Twitter handle inside of the comic. These things all happen, but it is somebody's private account. And if they want to make bad business decisions for themselves, they can. And if the publisher wants to have somebody on social media saying crazy things, it's their decision for how much of a leash they want to let them have. So all that said, I mean, we can be upset with it. I think we can comment on it. We can critique it. We can say this isn't acceptable behavior. This is bad, and we don't like it. But it is their account. It is truthful. It is their account. They have the rights to make stupid decisions with their account. Block bots are I think lazy is the perfect word, because they're designed by purpose to rid the noise of some trolls. Some people are harassing me, and I just run a bot, and it just instantly quiets out the noise of all the people harassing me. That's the premise. The problem is, one, it does not take that much time to block the individuals who are harassing you. That is a myth. Yes, it may take you an extra 5 or 10 minutes to go down a thread and block people individually, as opposed to 30 seconds to find a block bot. However, having sat in a bar with a creator and watched them get pissed off at a thread and use a block bot, the going to that system, getting it to work, putting it in place, then going, oh crap, I just blocked some other creators who were, I got caught in that net, and I have to go and unblock them. They spent more time than if they had just individually blocked. And what they don't see, it's like the iceberg thing in the water. When you see an iceberg in water, you're seeing 10% on the surface. Underneath, the 90% you don't see. And the same thing is true with people you block. When you use a bot, you're getting rid of that 10% of trolls, and you're eliminating 90% who are not talking to you, probably friendly to you, probably support you, and you make them all either disengage or active enemies. And that's just lazy. I think lazy is a perfect word, even though you're right, a decent number of creators were pissed off at that terminology of saying lazy. But I think it's dead accurate, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's basically you're taking a chainsaw to an issue that needs a scalpel.
Well said.
It's a very large overreaction to an issue. Like I said, I if you want to use block bots, if I didn't have my channel and I didn't need to review comic books, before I had this, I did not buy comics from people that blocked me, and I would check every week because I got so sick and tired of it. You spoke about Vita Ayala, blocking people. I'm a huge fan of Livewire. At the time when she was announced to be writing that series, I read everything Valiant Comics. It was my favorite shared comic universe, and that was the first truly negative experience I ever had with that publisher. They announced the series. I was like, wow, Livewire. Who's writing it? I went and hit on it. And I was like, why am I blocked? I was like, I don't even know who this is. I certainly have never talked to them. They've certainly never interacted with me. And it feels personal.
It does. And it's a thing that people, they've got to digest. And I think it is turning around. I think I've watched, interestingly enough, I've had creators who run a block bot on me. And typically when I'm blocked, I block them in return because I've just had too many creators, including one of the ones you mentioned, Gail, who blocks and then proceeds to take screen captures and tosses rocks at you from behind a wall. I just think that's to me in my mind unethical behavior, but the block bot itself. So I will typically block people who block me, just as it kind of, it goes both ways. And
common courtesy,
exactly. I've had creators come unglued at the fact that they are blocked, that they do not understand. They're like, why is this? And they're using words. Why are you doing this personal attack on me by blocking me? It's like, you took the first step there. But I wish more people would.
Turnabout's for fair play.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you have to, you have to recognize. I've had creators who have run block bots and taken a bunch of retailers and shop accounts out with it. And a lot of this happened when people start running block bots against Ethan Van Sciver, because a lot of comic shops followed Ethan Van Sciver because he was a creator, like they follow all creators. They were not listening to his videos. They were not getting involved in any of the stuff he was doing. Probably in many cases thought he was an ass for the things he was saying. Doesn't matter. They get blocked. So a lot of these shops would block in return. And then you'd see the creator saying, why are these shops blocking me? What's going on? It's this kind of environment. So it does feel very personal. It immediately creates somebody, either a disinterested person or an enemy where it doesn't need to belong. And I would beg the creators, just be thoughtful about what you're doing. Yes, it's your account. It's your right to do it. And the trolling is terrible. And I've seen people go after Vita, Mags, and others in just the worst possible way. You see comments that are just disgusting going at them. And anybody who was receiving this would be pissed and probably pipe off. Like you see Donnie Cates at times lose his temper with people. If you're enduring 6 straight hours of people wanting to ship Venom and Eddie in some kind of weird symbiote relationship and they're getting very hostile about it, that would piss me off too. I'm completely on board with that. But it's that iceberg problem. Remember the 90% that you're not hearing from that you're about to take out.
It's interesting you brought up EVS. Whether you agree with what he's saying or anything, he does have a very engaged audience, and a lot of them are interested in comics. So that is a great resource if you wanted to see what people are thinking or what the chatter is. When he makes a video or he posts something on social media, you're going to see, what some of the general feelings are, and you'll start, so that's actually a good resource if you want to keep on top of of comic culture and what's going on, and maybe what are some of the complaints that are going on. So it just seems like you're losing so much information on your audience.
Yeah, and I mean, it's purposeful. I mean, the reason a lot of people run block bots, several creators have talked about this, they'll run a block bot on Ethan's followers and his people, and that includes, of course, Ethan himself. Then they'll proceed to unblock Ethan because he's part of the club, so they want to keep hearing what he's hearing, but all these people are suddenly taken out. So if you do follow Ethan, you're going to get blocked by a large number of creators. You just need to know you're signing up for that. A significant number are going to run block bots and you're going to be taken out. And it's a desire to silence that community that follows him. It's a desire to remove that connection, that network that he has. And again, I mean, I don't agree with some of what Ethan does. I think the behavior on online stuff is ridiculous at times and all the rest. Despite everything, my personal opinion on the matter, he's an artist. He's been on a number of titles, a bunch of high profile titles. He does talk comics. So it's a fact of life. If you're really pissed about what he says, you shouldn't have let him in the door, 10 more years ago, but you did. Sorry, more than 10 years ago, but you let him draw these comics. He's part of your community. So it's a fact you have to deal with as a creator, as a company. And if you're a new and up and coming creator and you decide to run a block bot against some of these big people, you are kneecapping your own career.
I don't like block bots, but as far as I'm concerned, there's far worse behavior online from professionals. We've witnessed Max Bemis tell customers to feast on his ass. Robbie Rodriguez send X-rated photos of some dude's cornhole, to EVS himself. And Bill Sienkiewicz and Ron Mars, among others, go nuclear on customers with little to no provocation. Do publishers have a creator online code of conduct or social media policy? And if not, why not?
Well, the big two do. Marvel and DC absolutely do. They're not enforced. Like a number of things in big companies that are HR driven, they're there for if a problem occurs, like the Bordertown situation, where you can pull that out and say, well, here's more justification for us terminating your contract. But it's not something that's actively enforced. It should be, and I think it will be more. The thing to maybe put in perspective for some of these creators who see some of this behavior, I think Max Bemis is a perfect example of this. In music, there is people like controversy. It's like reality TV. They like it when a musician or somebody says something crazy to a fan and throws a beer bottle at them or whatever else. Axl Rose's antics during the late 80s and 90s, everybody was kind of cheering on. It's not much different from the Kardashians and some of the stuff that goes on there. For whatever reason, that bad behavior is just kind of the lifestyle. And comic books is that lifestyle light. So you see some creators come in, and Max Bemis has that history. Of course, he was a musician. You see these creators kind of wanting to come on and put on that same edgy persona to their social media profile. They're wanting to be the bad boy of comics, and that's who they kind of want to be. The problem is comics as an industry is tiny compared to the music industry in these other places, and so it's a more tight-knit community. It's one that bonds more to fans in a more one-to-one way. So this kind of behavior, and this is the kind of approach that Gail Simone will take, which is I'm going to be kind of edgy and knock people and have this kind of attitude and be a must follow because of my comments. That's the persona they're trying to put on. And I think sometimes people forget that persona doesn't necessarily work for comics and tonally comes off very poorly. Like the Bemis example, like sending people a picture of your butt. I mean, it plays amateur, not like a cool, edgy creator.
The publishers have these policies in place, but it's more like a CYA, so they can, do paperwork and be like, yes, now I can and do that thing. It's just too bad that they're not following them strictly, not implementing new measures like social media managers or people to work with some of these creators and maybe be their social media managers for them and kind of take care of it, because not everyone is meant to take direct criticism. It feels like Marvel and DC should be doing more to protect their creators from themselves online.
No, I completely agree. I think one of the things that we lost in comics is in the 80s and before, but in the 80s, there was a very established program within DC and Marvel. You mentioned Ron Mars. He'll remember this, that there was more of a kind of editorial guidance, more help, more kind of making sure people don't fall. And always, not just with social media. Obviously, there wasn't social media back then, but just how to give interviews, how to do things, how to make sure you meet your deadlines, how you make sure you don't blow your money and find yourself living in a car. There's just a little bit more help there. And today, that network does not exist. And as you mentioned with the big two, it's more of a legal CYA where these policies are put in place to provide some extra justification in the event something bad goes on, or if there's a true bomb that goes off with a creator doing something terrible, they can point to this policy and quickly take care of it. But at the same time, for that same reason, they're not followed, because the reality is if Marvel today followed their existing Disney social media policy by the letter, 75% of their top writers would have to be fired. The things that Dan Slott, Mark Waid, Al Ewing, others have said, even in kind of jest, whether it's politics or at somebody, violate that agreement. And if you take out one, you're going to have to take them all out. So they're not going to do that.
It's kind of all indicative of the time we live in. It feels like there's never been a bigger divide between people. I've seen family members disowning each other over politics these days. Marvel Executive Vice President Tom Brevoort called his own son an entitled white asshole over the 2016 election. Marvel editor Alana Smith promised to blacklist Trump supporters from the industry after the election. What's it going to take to rein this behavior in and create a better comic culture on social media? Young prospective readers are on social media. They see this stuff. It's embarrassing. And the insane online behavior from both sides is an absolute inhibitor for new readers that want to come into the hobby.
New readers and new creators both. I think we're living through an era that very much feels like if you were an early adopter and you took those AOL discs and you put them in and you dealt with the terrible modem speed and the noise and everything else, and you went to the message boards, they were the Wild West of just dumpster fire kind of comments. And now what you've seen is that psychology. People eventually grew up and got out of it. Now that same psychology has been broadened to all the non-technical people, everybody. So everyone, the world is going through this phase of not really understanding how to deal with social media, not really understanding that, throwing tantrums online, disowning people because they voted for somebody you don't like. That kind of stuff is toxic to yourself long term. It has nothing to do with the topic. Whether you like Trump or not, becoming a maniac over Trump, pro or con, is not in your best interest as a human being, for your family, for your friends, for anything. And a lot of people are just going through this phase. I'm hoping that we get out of it someday. The problem that I see, to move away from comics too much, but all of this chaos, all of this noise, all this anger is profitable. People are making tons of money off of it, whether it's videos, whether it's super chats, whether it's gaining money for your election. I mean, we're in the 2020 election cycle, and the politicians are going to raise a record amount of money. And they're not raising it out of wonderful ideas and great things. They're raising it out of hate and outrage. And can you believe the other guy is this bad? Please give me money. So you take that to comics, it's the same thing. We have videos, we have commentators come on who dislike a certain comic, and the response is, let's do a 20-minute hate video on it, and gets everybody just riled up. And when you see those people with tens of thousands of subscribers and a bunch of likes and super chats making thousands of dollars in the course of a couple hours just crapping on this comic, it feeds all the rest of the smaller people coming up who say, that's how I can make money as well. So we're going through this phase. I hope we change. I hope things move along from both the fans and the creator side. The Jonathan Hickman, by and large, has a very passive, very good online persona, and he's got a big selling comic and a nice initiative. I hope more young creators and people are looking at that and going, you know what? Maybe a Gail Simone who snarks all day doesn't really have a title, and her name is known, but she's not really, no best-selling books to her name right now. And she's not on any current book. Jonathan Hickman, meanwhile, over there is a pretty quiet, chill guy, and he seems to be getting titles. Brian Edward Hill keeps getting titles. Scott Snyder is very, very nice and very polite. He keeps getting titles. Yeah, maybe that's the thing to emulate. Maybe if I want a good career, I should emulate the people who are successful and not losing their minds on social media. I hope.
I really want to thank you. Is there any last words that you want to say about, the topic of social media, specifically with pros, before we finish this video?
Yeah, just to pros out there, just block individually. I mean, just not to be a broken record, just block the people who are really making problems for you, and you will have a bigger audience. The majority of people in comics, including, by the way, some of the people who are trolling and saying horrible comments, most people want to love comics. That's the line everybody wants to have. They want to read, they want to enjoy, they want to be part of comics. Very few people in the grand scheme of things are just here to cause trouble. So for the pros, please try and remember that. It's, we as fans and retailers and others, we support you. Please just consider, we're here to read comics. Help us.
Very well said, my friend. I just want to say thank you. I know this is probably going to get us in a little bit of trouble whenever we talk about some of these subjects that are a little bit more explosive. They get the heart beating. They get people kind of on edge. The fangs kind of tend to come out. But I appreciate that you're always willing to speak your mind and say what you think is right, no matter what the forum or the place. And I really appreciate you coming on and talking about this.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And for everybody, just remember, even if it feels personal, it doesn't mean it was personal. And a lot of things feel personal, but if you can have that perspective, you're happier. Your health matters. So let's have fun. Enjoy comics. Thank you.
If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I would appreciate it very much. It helps us attract more views for the channel. Subscribe for future commentary, comic book news, and reviews. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. If you want to talk comics, movies, and much, much more, you can follow me on Twitter at Wes_from_TC. With that, Salamat Po, and I'm out.